Un saludo
A
al reverendo
greeting
Enoch Carlón
to the
Infante
Reverend
en la
Enoch
iglesia de
Caron
Animal Torrea
Infante in the
Jesucristo Nuevo
church he
Vivo en
pastors,
Ecatepec, México,
Jesus
y
Christ the
también al
Good
reverendo
Olive
Pedro
in
Salazar
Ecatepec,
en la
Mexico, and also
congregación
the Reverend Pedro
La Voz
Saraza
del Ángel
in the
allá en
congregation
Oaxaca,
The
México.
Voice of the
Es
Angel
para mí un
there in
privilegio poder
Osaka,
enviarle este
Mexico.
saludo por medio
It's a
de nuestro
privilege
hermano
for me to
Carlón
be able to send this
y
greeting
pedirle al Señor sus
through our brother
bendiciones
Caron and ask the
sobre
Lord
todos y
for his
cada uno de
blessings upon
ustedes
each and every one
y
of
vuestras
you
congregaciones,
and your congregations,
y desearles
and
que
wish you
pronto
to soon
obtengan esa fe
obtain
de rapto,
that rapturing
la
faith
cual obtuvo Enoch.
which Enoch obtained,
Él caminó con Dios
and he walked
y
with
fue
God
raptado.
and was
O
raptured.
sea, él
In other words,
obtuvo el conocimiento
he obtained
de
the
la fe de
knowledge
rapto,
of the faith of
como
rapture,
nos escribió él en
as he
uno
wrote
de los
to
escritos,
us in one of the
que Enoch
writings that Enoch
tenía
had
la fe de rapto, o
the
sea, él
rapturing
obtuvo
faith. In other words, he
esa fe de
obtained
traslación,
that faith of
la cual
translation,
representa a todos los
which
escogidos de
represents
Dios de
all
este tiempo
God's
final,
chosen ones
que
of this end
obtendremos
time,
esa
who
fe
will
de rapto,
obtain that rapturing faith. And
en este caminar rumbo a la tierra
in this
prometida,
walk
la
towards the
vamos
promised
a
land, in the road
obtener
to the promised land, we will
y
obtain it,
seremos
and we will
arrebatados
be caught up
a la
to
séptima
the
dimensión,
seventh
donde está preparada
dimension,
la cena de las
where
bodas
the
del
marriage supper
Cordero.
of the Lamb is prepared.
Ahora estamos
Now,
viviendo
we are living
en este lapso de tiempo
in this period of time
de estar
of
frente al Jordán,
facing Jordan,
como estuvo
as
Josué
Joshua
allí
was
preparándose
there preparing
para cruzarlo.
to cross it.
Siempre que se está en
Whenever
un
we
momento
are in a
en
moment
donde va a trascender,
where it will transcend
ese paso
that step that God
por medio
will take
del
through
instrumento
the instrument
que Dios está usando en ese
that God
tiempo,
is using at that
y
time,
el pueblo
and the people,
siempre que se va a dar un paso así,
whenever such a step is going to be
hay una
taken,
etapa
there is a
de
stage
preparación.
of preparation.
O sea, el paso del
In other
Jordán
words, the
allá
crossing
era
that city
para
of Jordan was to enter the promised land that God promised
le prometió a
to
Abraham, que su
Abraham,
descendencia
that his descendants
heredaría
would inherit
una tierra que fluiría leche y
a
miel.
land flowing with milk and honey.
Y ustedes saben toda esa
And
historia
you know all that history
de esa
of
trayectoria
the
del
trajectory
pueblo
of
de
the
Dios, que es
firstborn
el
people of
pueblo hebreo,
God, which
todo
is
lo
the
que
Hebrew
pasaron
people.
para que llegara el momento en donde
And
estaban
everything they went through to reach
entre
the moment where they were
esa
between that
de
decision
entrar a la tierra
to
prometida,
enter the promised land.
pero no iban a entrar
But
sin
they were not
estar
going to
preparados.
enter without being
O sea, había
prepared.
un tiempo de
In
prueba,
other words, there was a time
un tiempo
of
de
test,
preparación,
a time of
un tiempo de
preparation, a
separación,
time of
todas
separation,
esas cosas que
and
envuelve
all those things that
una
involve such
decisión
an important
tan
decision,
importante, lo cual era
which
cruzar el
was to
Jordán.
cross Jordan.
Dependía
It depended
ese tiempo, ese lapso de
on
tiempo
that time, on that lapse of time,
de Dios por medio de ese instrumento
from
Josué.
God through his instrument Joshua,
Ese tiempo dependía quién
and the people
pasaría el Jordán en seco
on that depended
y quiénes
who
no.
would cross Jordan dry and who would not.
Es un tiempo
And this
paralelo
time is a parallel time
en donde el Jordán,
where
que
the
es la muerte,
Jordan, which is death,
que es la gran tribulación,
which is the great
está frente a
tribulation,
nosotros.
is in front of us.
Y vemos cómo
And we
está
see how the world
y cómo está
is
toda la naturaleza,
and how the whole nature is, the human beings and everything.
es la situación
It is the situation
en donde ha llegado ya
where
a su colmo
the
esa
evil
maldad del amorreo,
of the Amorites has already reached its peak. Because the kingdom of the Gentiles, what it has left is this little time that we are now living in,
donde los escogidos de
where
Dios
the
están
elect of
todavía
God
en
are
esta
still on
tierra,
this planet
y
Earth
3 años y medio
in 3.5 years of great
o sea
tribulation.
que el reino de los gentiles,
In other words, the kingdom of the Gentiles has nothing left.
ya la maldad del
The
amorreo ha llegado
evil
a su
of the
colmo,
of the Amorites has already reached its peak.
como no está mirando a
And
través
God, since He is not looking through the
del
throne of
trono de misericordia y
mercy,
ve la tierra
and He doesn't
a
see
través del
the earth
sacrificio
through the sacrifice of that mercy seat, which was made on the Calvary's cross, with his first coming, that blood was placed in the most holy place of the spiritual temple, and God for 2,000 years has been looking on the earth through the blood of his son Jesus. By him already leaving that throne of intercession and having already taken the book, that throne has become a throne of judgment. Therefore, mankind is already condemned. Is already condemned to the divine judgment. But because God's chosen ones are in the preparation stage in which they are obtaining the rapturing faith, then God holds his wrath and looks at us through that new mercy seat and says that there is mercy for God's elected ones, and for the love of the elect he defers the wrath and he holds it. As it says there in Revelation, the angel tells the angels to hold back, hold yet back, let no wind blow, because in addition to God's chosen ones who are being prepared to obtain the rapturing faith, there are also the Hebrew chosen ones. There are 144,000 Hebrews who have to be sealed in their foreheads before the Great Tribulation begins. And God, out of love for his chosen ones, both the Gentiles and the Hebrew people, he has held back the wrath, because that time, since he left the throne of intercession, until this moment, he is already ready to pour the divine judgments upon this planet Earth and upon every human being that has harmed the planet Earth, and has also harmed God's chosen ones. The Hebrew people would soon open their eyes and identify the manifestation of God in the midst of his church when it will be at the final stage of the chosen ones having the rapturing faith completely in their lives, because that is where God will manifest the power in all its fullness. And that is why the Hebrew people would say it. They will see those ministries in the midst of his church operating. And what is the seventh seal for the church? Which is the coming of the Lord, is the seventh trumpet. Moses and Elijah, the two olive trees for Israel. And the chosen ones who have ascended into the age of the cornerstone and dispensation of the kingdom, who have been comprehending and understanding and receiving the seventh seal in his second coming, they will be seeing that manifestation through the revealed word that has been given to them. For those who have the prophetic perception to be able to discern the thought of God in the midst of his church in this end time. And in discerning the thought of God, they can then understand God working in the midst of his church in simplicity and as the fulfillment of the coming of the Lord as a thief in the night. And the Hebrew people will also be seeing and receiving and understanding that divine visitation which they have been waiting for. For them it is the first coming, but it is the second coming of the Lord, and by receiving it they will understand what was the first coming. For the Jews, they need to see signs in order to believe. But for the Gentiles, for the elect, for the age of the cornerstone, they only need to see the word being quickened, being materialized in their midst, and there they can identify through the teaching that it is the fulfillment of the coming of the Lord. In other words, the great trumpet sounding, bringing the rapturing faith which is in the thunders. There are those represented in Thomas who need to see, and then they say, yes, that is truly God working in the midst of His church, bringing what He had already promised. But by that time when they say that it was really God working in their midst, it will be too late for them to receive the rapturing faith, because it has already been brought for that time, and those who are going to be raptured already have it. In other words, obtaining the title deed. And no one can say, but allow me, let me see the signs. Or speaking with more clarity, you can say, but let him tell us now, at once, everything he knows. Or let him tell us at once everything that happened in those last days of that visit, which he had in those different moments where he spoke with the messenger. Let him tell us all that. See, they are putting themselves in the position of those Pharisees and Sadducees who said, if you are the Christ, tell us plainly and trouble not our souls. See, but they didn't want to hear those words of Jesus for them to believe. Rather, it was to condemn him. Because then, when he told them, I told you, and ye believed not. And then they say, he has blasphemed. See? The unbeliever always, no matter how many signs and no matter how many wonders God does for them, they will always be unbelievers. And whether they want to know and they want to learn in order to have more basis to attack, to criticize. But God's chosen one, an elect of God doesn't need that, because they are only watching God working through His Word. They identify the Creator of the heavens and the earth through the Word. You notice, if Judas had seen his name written in that section of the book of life and not in the Lamb's book of life, in that section he surely would have been careful not to do something that would erase his name. But then the scriptures would not be fulfilled. There's a scripture, there's a psalm where it speaks of that he put forth his hand, says something like that. We can find it. Where that scripture says, there are different scriptures which then would not have fulfillment. And so it is with every human being who has not seen himself in the book who belongs to that section of the book of life, whose name can be erased. Because if he gets to see, where then he tries to behave as to the work of God that he is doing, that God is doing in the time in which he is living. He then tries to be more careful because he knows that he may run the risk that his name will be erased. But since the only ones who can see, as John saw, that John saw his name written there, and God's chosen ones can identify themselves as the elect of this time because they have seen themselves in the book. And how can they see themselves in the book now? And before we can say that they couldn't, because the book is in their midst. And by being in their midst, remember that the book was opened, and by being in their midst, the chosen ones, by eating that book, they can see themselves there in the Word, because they are part of that book. And the Word is becoming Word, Word with Word. That is why they obtain the knowledge that their name is written there in the Lamb's Book of Life, and identify themselves with the work of God, with the manifestation of God in the third pole. They identify themselves as the elect who are receiving that rapturing faith. That is why some can't understand, can't receive, can't have part with food of this hidden manna and can't digest it. For some it is sweet in their mouth and they digest it. For others it is bitter and they cast it aside. Because since they are not of that section of the Lamb's Book of Life, they automatically don't receive that food. And since they don't completely know that mystery of what it is to be written in the section that can be erased, many of them think that they are written in the Lamb's Book of Life, and they lay back thinking that they are there, when in reality, one of the evidences that they don't have the Holy Spirit working in their life, helping them to understand the mystery of the second coming of the Lord, since they don't have that, it is one of the evidences because they haven't received the fulfillment of the word for the hour. In other words, they haven't received the revelation of what God is doing in the time they are living in. And the chosen one, the wise virgin, although she may not understand some things, but she believes them with all her heart. It is like when a child doesn't know what he is eating, and the father says to him, eat it, it will do good to you. But I don't know what it is, I don't understand that. But it tastes good, eat it. It will do good for you. And he eats it. You notice then he understands that there were vitamins which he received, even though maybe he didn't understand the way that food was made, or that vitamin, the compounds that it was made of. He didn't understand maybe how that was going to nourish him and help his body be healthier. Another one might give him, yeah, it is, eat it. But he doesn't listen in obedience to his father's words and pushes it aside. No, I don't want it. I don't want that. There are children like that who sometimes don't like food. Even if it is food which is very, very tasty in flavor, even if others are a little bit that are not as tasty as others, but have a lot of vitamins. And there are children who would not like it. No, I don't want it. But eat it because it will do good for you, for your body. No, I don't want that. See? He already enters into disobedience, and so it is in the spiritual things. We are feeding ourselves with this title deed, that in our mouth is sweet, because there is nothing sweeter than honey. Although in the belly it is bitter, because of all the trials, the struggles, the persecutions, because of eating that title deed, which are coming and those which will come later. The elect one, the elect eat that book, because the Heavenly Father has told us to eat it. It is not to have it in the hand or to have it laying around, but it is eat it. And just as John represented the final messenger, he also represents the church of the Lord in this end time, where we are told, eat it, eat the title deed, because there is what you and I need to obtain the rapturing faith. And that is what has been happening in this period of time which we are in, where it is parallel to the time of Joshua and parallel to the time of Jesus there on Mount of Transfiguration when he was adopted. In other words, there are different angles and different events that happened in the history of the human race, where God fulfilled many of the events at every moment, where he was there reflecting, typifying what would be at the end of the work of God on this planet Earth, in the midst of the human race, in these earthly bodies. And depending on what angle one sees all those events, it is what one has to be seeing now, also being fulfilled and being materialized in our midst. Remember that we are now living, what we are now living is the history of everything that would later be the knowledge of what the church of the age of the cornerstone and dispensation of the kingdom had in these final days, and the beginning of that glorious millennial kingdom which has begun that dispensation while we are in these bodies. It is the only dispensation that intertwines with the dispensation of grace and also intertwines with the millennial kingdom. The dispensation of grace can't or couldn't intertwine with the millennium. It is the dispensation of the kingdom that begins to be fulfilled in our midst, being in these mortal bodies, and then when we are transformed and raptured, and the marriage supper of the Lamb and the millennium, see, all that corresponds to the dispensation of the kingdom. Great things are happening now in the midst of the people of God, in the midst of the church that is going to be raptured. And all those who are ordained by God to obtain that rapturing faith, none of them will be left out. All of them will obtain that rapturing faith, that faith of translation. Therefore, brethren and friends, continue to hold on without fainting onto this stage, very, very important and glorious. And even though you say it so simple, and even though you say it can't be, you continue to hold on that word. Hold to that teaching in the third pole, because outside that you will not be able to obtain the rapturing faith. All the elect are going to obtain it. And as he said, the third pole would be by the spoken word. So it would be being fulfilled. And the third pole, there was nothing to base it on. There was nothing to say, this is going to be like this, and this is like this. But the angel said to him, you will not tell it. You won't tell it to nobody. In other words, anyone who stands up and says that the third pole can't be what is happening will have to give an account to God. Because about the third pole, since nothing was said, doesn't give you the right to say that it is not so. Rather, you must be silent, as heaven is silent now, while this work is being carried out. And be reverent, and have that reverential fear before the fulfillment of what was already promised by God through the fourth Elijah, who saw everything that was happening there, and also heard what was spoken to him in the little wooden room, which he said he would take to the grave. In other words, they will not wait. The Thomases don't wait to be told in order to believe. They will continue being Thomases until the end. And at the end, then it will be shown to them, and they will see, and they will understand that it is so. But it will be too late for the Thomases. Now, the church, God is working with her, with the wise virgins, with God already predestined since before the foundation of the world, and He already wants to take them out of here, because soon all those divine judgments will be unleashed, which are not for the church bride, the wise virgins. So, God's chosen ones, written in the Lamb's Book of Life, it is you that God has as priority to receive and obtain that rapturing faith. Because then, the third pole is for the foolish ones and also for the lost, as a testimony that they no longer have an opportunity, and for the 144,000. But the priority of the third pole is to catch those 153 fish. In other words, to catch the big fishes. The fish which were represented there in that miraculous catch that Jesus did. And it was those fish that Brother Branham cast the hook. And everything that God is fulfilling at this time is the fulfillment of that miraculous catch, which is putting us in the edge of the cornerstone and in the dispensation of the kingdom. So, God's chosen ones, I pray to God that soon we will all obtain that rapturing faith, that faith of translation, which is being given by the Holy Spirit in the teaching under the tent in this end time. And I pray to God that soon everyone will obtain it. And so they are already at that level of adoption, so they can have that glorious stage in favor of the work of God, together with the instrument that God has in this end time, so that after those days, when the resurrection occurs, to be here for 30 to 40 days and do that work that God has already predestined since before the foundation of the world, which we will do in those days, premiering that new body, and then we shall go to the marriage supper of the Lamb. My desire is that God will soon fulfill that moment, where several of them will begin to have that full perception, that full prophetic perception, as the time of the culminating part of the third pole is approaching, because God will do certain things in which they will be of great help, ministers and brethren, in favor of the third pole. And we hope that many will be ready in that moment, prepared, so they can have that adoption in their bodies, so they can be of great help for the final work of God on this planet Earth, being in these bodies. Something great is about to happen. And now we can say that there is still a little bit remaining, because if in the time of Paul, in the first age, you notice there were still 2,000 years left. Let's say, and there he spoke as if it was in those days. Also in different stages and ages of the church, everyone was waiting for it to be fulfilled in his age. Now we can say that we are face to face, at the front, looking at the promises, looking at God in the midst of His church, working to fulfill that which they spoke in those past times about this time. In other words, we are the actors of everything that they spoke about this time. So onward, serving the Lord with fear and trembling, and with certainty that God is with the people, that God is with us, that God is with us, preparing us to cross Jordan dry. May God bless you, may God keep you. It was a greeting for this brethren that asked me, but this greeting also goes to all the brethren in different countries, and also very especially to the missionary Miguel Marine. May God bless you and keep you all. And may you continue having today, a Thursday, February 23rd of this year, 2023, full of God's blessings. And at night, and tomorrow and Sunday, and Saturday, and that which is spoken, may God allow us to see more clearly all this so glorious stage that He is carrying out in the midst of His church. May God bless you greatly, all of you, and may you all have a good evening. May God bless you.